All the geniuses tell us that Assad killed those children. But do they really know that? Of course they don't really know that. They're making it up. They have no real idea what happened. Actually, both sides in the Syrian civil war possess chemical weapons. How would it benefit Assad using chlorine gas last weekend? Well, it wouldn't. Assad's forces had been winning the war in Syria. The administration just announced its plans to pull American troops out of Syria, having vanquished ISIS. That's good news for Assad, and about the only thing he could do to reverse it and to hurt himself would be to use poison gas against children. Well, he did it anyway, they tell us. He's that evil. Please, keep in mind this is the same story they told us last April. Do you remember that? It was almost exactly a year ago. The new administration announced it was no longer seeking to depose Assad from power. Regime change was no longer our policy. So the usual war chorus in Washington started yelping, went berserk, and days later, Assad supposedly used sarin gas against civilians in Syria. There was video. We bombed a Syrian airbase in response to that. At the time, this show asked what seemed like the obvious question: are we really sure that Assad did that? It seems weirdly timed and counterproductive to him. Shut up, they explained. Of course we're sure. What an unpatriotic question. But of course they were lying. 2 months ago, the Secretary of Defense admitted that actually we still have no proof that Assad used sarin gas last year. The story, it turns out, was propaganda. It was designed to manipulate Americans, just like so much of what they say. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. Before we go to war, are we sure all of this is real? Do we really know that Assad was behind the gas attack? It's not a defense of Assad, but it's an obvious question. How could we know that conclusively so soon after the attack happened? We didn't have any Americans on the ground. And why would Assad do that, given the certainty it would hurt his own interests? And while we're on the subject, by the way, why is a war in Syria a good idea for the United States in the first place? How would it make us safer, happier, more prosperous? Those seem like reasonable questions to us. In fact, the exact questions you'd want your policymakers to ask. But no, they're not asking them, and they're offended to hear them. The first person we asked those questions to, Republican Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi, implied that we were somehow allied with Vladimir Putin just for asking. Other than that, Wicker had no answers at all. It was embarrassing, yet he didn't seem embarrassed at all. Others just denounced us right off the top. Jennifer Rubin of the Washington Post tweeted this, quote, "He is insane," meaning me. "Fox is not a news organization. That is all." Noah Rothman of Commentary called this show, quote, "nothing less than undiluted Russian propaganda." Seth Mandel of the New York Post summarized the criticism perfectly when he tweeted this, very simply, "Shut the F up." These are journalists, by the way. No explanation. Of course, shutting the F up is the whole point of tweets like that. They want you to be quiet. They want you to do what you're told. No more questions. Shut up and obey. There's no chance of that, though. Sorry. Glenn Greenwald has been following all of this. He's a founding editor at The Intercept, and he joins us tonight. So, Glenn, leaving aside the real question of how you should respond to Syria and is it a threat to the world order and to us and to its neighbors, I think those are all fair questions. But why the universal attempt in the media here in this country, left and right, to shut down a meaningful conversation about it?
The only time I think that the media praised Donald Trump was almost 1 year ago today when he bombed an airfield in Syria in response to what had been alleged at the time was a chemical attack by the Assad regime. People who hate Donald Trump and go on air every day took a break for 24 hours to proclaim him presidential, because that's what U.S. presidents in their eyes do, is they just drop bombs on other countries with no declaration of war, no reason why U.S. interest or the U.S. borders are at stake when it happens. So I think that's just the ethos in Washington, that not only is it just an inherently good and presidential thing to do to drop bombs on other countries. That's why polls around the world show that the greatest threat to world peace in the eyes of the public around the world is the United States. But also, Adam Smith wrote 300 years ago that the reason people who live in capitals and the elites in countries love to watch their countries bomb other countries is because it gives them a sense of excitement and purpose and kind of this pulsating stimulation. And I think that's a really big part of it. It doesn't matter whether it will accomplish anything. It just makes us feel strong and powerful and purposeful to do, and so just bombs away.
I think that's right. I mean, I think human nature explains a lot of this. I agree completely. But journalists exist to push back against that. Not necessarily against war, but against a heedless rush toward anything. I mean, our job is to be skeptical and ask real questions. Why is no one doing that, and anyone who does is attacked?
So, you know, just about every name that you mentioned in the media who attacked you for raising questions about whether or not we ought to actually go and bomb another country are all essentially neocons. They're the same people who were doing this in 2002 and 2003, saying anyone who asked questions about whether we should actually go to war and remove Saddam Hussein was an admirer of the Saddam regime. They did the same in 2011 when it came time to remove Gaddafi. They said if you're against that war, it means you love Gaddafi and you want to see him slaughter people. It's just the standard tactic. And what we have now is this kind of union between neocons who have now once again kind of been embraced by both the establishment wings of the Republican and Democratic Party, and the militarist in both parties, people like Lindsey Graham and lots of Democrats who love every single war. And so this climate arises that you're just supposed to cheer when it comes time to drop bombs on other countries, not ask whether there's evidence to justify it, not ask whether it will do any good, not ask whether it will kill any civilians. And if you do ask those questions, it means you're on the side of America's enemies. It's an incredibly authoritarian tactic that gets used to suppress debate.
Yeah, it's poison. I agree. Glenn Greenwald, thank you, as always.